Good morning and greetings. Greetings to the world from South Georgia, USA. Beautiful morning here in Georgia. I'd say it's around 60 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, not a breath of wind, just beautiful. April 25th, 2024. The red deer and the fallow deer are looking well. That noise that you hear is the emu eating out of my corn box. So we'll just let him go right there, and I'll get back over here to where I was pointing. Beautiful, sunny. Get that pine cone out from under the top. It's keeping me from. Okay. All right, we're situated now. I can start my Bible lesson. My job is to seek the lost sheep that belong to Jesus Christ. They're out there all over the world, and they are, many of them, lost. And those of us who have been found are tasked with the job of seeking the lost sheep, our lost brothers. Now I'm talking about one of the, I'll just say the primary stories of the Bible is in Genesis 32, the story of Jacob being renamed Israel. And so Jacob was given a new name after he had an encounter with a man. Jacob said he was a man. Let me read a little bit to you. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip. And the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, that would be the man, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, that would be Jacob, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he, the man, said to him, Jacob, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, that is the man, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed. Then Jacob asked, saying to the man, tell me your name, I pray. And he, the man, said, why is it that you ask about my name? And he the man blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Okay. Jacob says that he saw God face to face, and his life was preserved. Now Jacob is telling you right there, he's identifying the man. He's saying that the man was God. Now, a few lines earlier, he said, "What is your name?" Jacob asked, saying, "Tell me your name." He's asking the man, "Tell me your name." Now, let's go back to verse 26. So the man said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go before you bless me." Now Jacob has apparently identified the man as God at that point. Well, you've been wrestling with him all night. Now, let me tell you this. This was not a wrestling match like in an actual wrestling match. This was a wrestling match in the mind. Jacob, this is my opinion, the way I read, Jacob was having a rough night. He couldn't get to sleep. He was wrestling with this man. Maybe it was a real man. I mean, maybe it was a man, and maybe it was a physical thing, or maybe it was a thing in a vision. It doesn't really matter. It could be either one, or it could be both. Why was Jacob wrestling with this man? Okay, that's a good question. So the man, as the day broke, was ready to end this wrestling match or this argument that they were having. But Jacob says, "I won't stop doing this until you bless me." So apparently right there, Jacob has more or less identified, hey, this is not a regular man here and he can bless me. Well, you don't ask a blessing of a man, you don't ask a blessing of anybody but God or your own father, okay? So Jacob had identified this was not Jacob's father, because his father was already deceased. So after he asked this person for a blessing, the man said to him, "Okay, what is your name?" And he said, "My name is Jacob." And this is the blessing now. This is he's going to do what he asked. He said, "I want a blessing." And the guy says, "Okay, tell me what your name is." And he said, "My name is Jacob." And the person that he was wrestling with says, "You won't be called Jacob anymore, but I'm going to rename you." Now, God renames people. You don't ask somebody to bless you. The blessing was to be renamed. No longer would Jacob have his old name or his fleshly name, but now he's going to have a new name. And the new name is, we have striven with God, or struggled with God and with men, and we have prevailed or survived. How do we know that it really means that we've looked at God and survived? Because one verse later it says, Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. So prevailed means that he didn't get killed looking at God face to face. So the man blessed him and renamed him. Now, when you get a new name in biblical terminology, that means you've been born again. Now, Jacob, during this wrestling match, ended up getting his hip thrown out of joint, having a very severe and painful injury from this wrestling. Now, I don't know if he fell out of bed. I don't know if he wasn't in bed. He was laying on the ground. If this man, it says it touched him. Well, there's no wrestling move where you touch somebody's hip and it comes out of joint. That is not a wrestling move. That is a supernatural thing. Now, I am speaking to those people out there, the Jacobs out there, the people out there that were in a similar situation to Jacob. Let me tell you what Jacob's problem was. Jacob had done his brother wrong, his brother Esau. He had taken, more or less stolen his birthright, the birthright of Esau. And then he went, after he did that and they got grown, or that he left and went and spent enough years that he had a whole family, and now he's coming home to meet his brother. His brother Esau had every right to hate Jacob because he stole his birthright. This is a family feud. And Jacob was afraid that Esau was going to kill him. And this wrestling match took place the day before the meeting with Esau. So Jacob was a totally different man the next morning. He was a man that had been blessed by God, or, as I say, he had been born again. He was no longer the fleshly entity, Jacob, but he was the born-again creature named Israel. All of us, at one time or another, get in the same shape that Jacob was. That is, we are afraid that we are going to be killed. We have gotten ourselves in a corner. We don't see any way out. Some people end up taking their own lives. Many of us think about taking our own lives. And we are wrestling with God. Now, God comes to us our whole life and tries to tell us the gospel. Many people have told us. Many people have rejected Jesus, ignored Jesus, denied that Jesus existed. Well, this would be Jacob. Of course, God is Jesus. So when he came face to face with this man, this was Jesus. Because, see, Jesus has a face. He's the personification of God. He made himself a man so that we could look on him. I'm talking out there, I'm speaking to some Jacobs out there, men and women, that are at that point to where you are thinking that you are going to die. You are scared. You are afraid. It says in Genesis 32:7, Jacob was afraid and distressed because Esau was coming to him with 400 men. Jacob did not have an army. He had a few servants. but he was mostly just with his family. And here comes his brother, who had every right to hate him, with 400 men. Jacob was thinking, I'm fixing to die, and my family's going to be killed or taken into captivity. And that night he struggled with the man. And the man promised to bless him, and the man renamed him. The man, Jesus, will bless you, and he will give you a new name. When does that happen? Jacob said, tell me your name, I pray. And he said, why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. He didn't tell him his name in this story. He just asked a question. Why are you asking me my name? And Jesus, which was the man, blessed him. Why didn't he say his name in this story? I believe God was wanting us to ask that same question. The question is, what is your name? Who are you, man? The man, Jesus, wants us to ask, who are you? What are you? And when we ask Jesus, what is your name, or who are you, that is when we get the blessing. He will tell us. He wants us to ask. The natural man cannot see Jesus as God. You must be born again, as Jesus told Nicodemus. You cannot enter the kingdom of heaven until you are born again as a new man with a new name. Nicodemus asked Jesus, how could you be born again? And Jesus didn't answer him. Just like Jesus didn't answer Jacob about what his name was. Why? In my opinion, this story was written by God, and it leaves this question up in the air. Jesus said, the man, which was Jesus, said, why is it that you ask me my name? And he blessed him there. If you ask Jesus who he is, which is, what is your name? Well, we know his name, but it means, but who are you? Are you just a man? When we ask Jesus, show us who you are, that's when he will bless you and give you a new name. That's what the story of Jacob means. The story of Jacob wrestling with the man. Now God's trying to wrestle with you or argue with you or convince you that he's real, but you run away from that wrestling match. You get into your own lifestyle, whatever it is, making money, chasing drugs, whatever it is, witchcraft, anything but going ahead and dealing with that Jesus is calling you. When you get yourself into a corner, you have nowhere to turn. That is, somebody's coming to you with a 400-man army and as far as you're concerned, every intention of ending your life, taking everything you have, and you yourself feel like it might be better to just end your own life, that's the wrestling match right there. And that's when you say, when you realize who you're wrestling with, and then that's when you say, save me, Jesus. I have nowhere to turn now. Jacob had nowhere to turn. And you Jacobs out there, and I mean men and women, that are in that shape, it's now time to ask a blessing. Jesus has been there the whole time, but you've been avoiding the battle. You've been avoiding his call. He's calling you. You ready to get out of that wrestling match? Okay. The break of day, that's the new day for you. That's the dawning when you ask him to bless you. Now, Jacob's hip was out of joint. He limped the rest of his life. Now, you're going to receive some injuries from this wrestling match with God. You've gotten yourself, into a situation. And if you answer him, you may not get an arrest, you may not get hurt. But we haven't answered him. If you're the Jacob, you've ignored him for all these years. If you belong to him, he will get you, let's put it this way, even if he has to break your hip. Break your hip, break your body. How about breaking your mind? He does that to people. They're about to go insane. They think they want to kill themselves. They have what they used to call melancholia. And we call it mental illness or depression. And it can get worse and worse and worse. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and have survived. Now it says prevailed, but I know survived is the right one, because Jacob said, I have seen God face to face and my life is preserved. Jacob didn't win that match. He survived that wrestling match. Finally saw God face to face, but he was stricken with a limp the rest of his life. We will very likely have a limp the rest of our lives when we come. When we ask Jesus, what is your name, or who are you? So to those Jacobs that I'm speaking to out there, I'm telling you, this is what this story means. This is your story. This story was written for you. It's a real happening, and it was recorded in the way that it was recorded. A man wrestled with Jacob. It didn't say God wrestled with him. It doesn't say an angel wrestled. It was a man. Well, the man that is God is Jesus. You can look on his face and not die, because it was understood in the Old Testament times that it was impossible to look at God and not die, not be burned up. But here Jacob says, I have seen God face to face and my life is preserved. Jacob was saying, that's not what I've been taught. I've seen the face of God and I haven't died. Well, I don't know exactly what Jacob thought of it, but he recognized this man as God. He put two and two together and said, this is God. Now, what kind of words they had that night back and forth, we'll never know. But they argued until the break of day, maybe physically, maybe just in words. And finally, Jacob said to himself, hey, this guy is God. I'm not going to stop this argument until he blesses me. All right, that's what I would like for some of you to do out there, and you will eventually. The sooner the better, and you can get back on track. Make up with your brother or those people that hate you. And how do you do that? You forgive them. Speaking to the Jacobs out there, don't avoid this wrestling match anymore. It's time to let it come to a head. Well, it's come to a head. You know it is because you're down and out. I'm talking to people that are down and out. You're on your last leg. You're clenching your teeth together. You can't stand it anymore. You don't know what to do. You need pills just to make it through the day. The different pills that people that are in deep depression get. It's just, you just can't stand it anymore. This is when you ask Jesus, Jesus, save me. I give. Save me, Jesus. All right, that's how it came out this morning. This story of Jacob could be made into 1,000 different sermons. It is so deep. It is a primary story. All of you that I'm speaking to, I'm talking to those that belong to God, the ones he's been talking to all these years, and you've been ignoring him, running away from him like Jacob did. He wants to rename you. May not be Israel. He'll tell you what the new name is. Seek that new name. Another word for a new name is being born again. When a person is born, or a baby is born, it's named. They name it. And if God causes you to be born again, then God will name you. He'll let you know. Israel's good enough. You could be Israel. It means that you have finally, the battle is over, and you have survived it and been born again. All right, I'd like to say the Lord's Prayer. Talk about Jacob, story of Jacob being a primary story. The Lord's Prayer is a primary prayer. It is the prayer. I'd like you to say it with me out there in the world, wherever you are. Jacob, I'm talking to you. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.